Welcome back to OVN. Today I want to talk a little bit about the lack of content here lately. Over the past month or so, I've taken a step back from the Destiny community. There's just so much going on, so much negative things that have been discussed and talked about. Some of the leaders in the Destiny community have been very outspoken about how they're disappointed with the content. They don't like the drip content, but that's not really why I haven't been doing videos. It's part of it. But the main reason why is there's just so much going on that's bigger than video games. Recently, a very well-known Destiny streamer has called out cancel culture, and in the same tweet, he also makes a really bad analogy that the community has come back on him. And it's ironic that he's calling out cancel culture and the same thing is kind of starting to happen to him on the backlash of that really bad analogy. So I wanted to talk about cancel culture and consequences for actions. So let's start at the top. So if you have a very large community, especially if you have a check mark next to your name on Twitter, you take on a social responsibility that your words have meaning. Not that they have more meaning than somebody with 10 followers or 50 or 1,000 followers on your social network, but you have a very large audience that a percentage of them hangs on your words. Anything that you deem important is now important to that community. And you can sway public opinion. The term influencer has been really tossed around. Brands such as the G Fuel and Advanced GG and Secret Labs, they're all looking for these influencers to talk about their products, thus sell more products through that influencer. So the idea that companies would think that your voice is large enough to sway a portion of your followers to purchase their products is it's a symbiotic relationship there. So what I'm getting at here is that especially when you take on those sponsorships, you're agreeing that your voice has some pull, some meaning. So when you're talking to your 100,000 followers, they believe what you say and they'll take on those beliefs. It's not that they're weak-minded, it's that they feel a connection to you. Your social responsibility on the words and your actions directly reflect your community. And it's easy to say that it's a small portion of a community that is not behaving in a socially acceptable way, like especially on Twitter. But you do bear some responsibility for that, even that small portion. So when you do or you say something that has real consequences, that you've affected somebody, for you to come back and just say, that's your problem, you took my tweet the wrong way, that's not going to fly. You have a check mark next to your name. You have, even if you don't want it, even if, like the famous Charles Barkley, I'm not a role model, your parents should be your role model. There's some truth to that, but at the same time, when you take on that responsibility of being a community leader, you also take on the responsibilities of the consequences of what you do and what you say. So the whole argument, cancel culture versus consequences, they're really entwined. So if I come out and I say something negative about a person or a community other than my own, and my community members take up arms and they go after another person, that responsibility is still yours in some, at least small portion, if not more than your fair share. You may feel like as an influencer, I didn't mean it that way. I can't control what my community does or says, but what you can do is if you make a tweet that could be considered controversial, You have a social responsibility to come out and say to your community, I didn't mean it that way, but I know that it has been taken another way. So let's set the record straight right now. The example that I'm talking about, I mean, I'm not going to say his name, but you guys know who I am talking about. To come out and double down on what you said and to call out that portion of an audience that says what you did was wrong. What you said was easily misconstrued. What you said hurt me in a real and meaningful way. But for that influencer to just say, I wasn't talking about you, you took it the wrong way. Not everything is about you when I tweet. It's a bad take. It's a super bad take. And the content creator that, I'm referring to has a very long history of being controversial. Some call him a shock jock. Some say that he's bro culture. And I'll tell you what, I followed this influencer for a long time, and there's portions of his stream that I find incredibly entertaining. But there are some things that he says that if he worked for a company, he would be gone. No doubt about it. They would not want him representing their brand. And that leads me to another portion of this conversation when I say that when you accept that check mark, when you take on sponsorships, you're not just representing yourself. 24/7, especially when you're on social media, you're representing other companies. So when you upset 20-30% of the people that follow you on Twitter, those companies are going to see that. And they're going to have to make the determination, is this influencer worth the risk? Because the influencer we're talking about is a PR nightmare, and he knows it, and he flaunts it, and he's proud of it. One of the things that he likes to say quite often is, be yourself. It's great advice. Everyone should be themselves, and I totally agree with that. But when you have such a large audience who hangs on your every word, thinks that you are so important in their lives, they've watched you thousands of hours on Twitch, they really want to emulate who you are, you have a responsibility to, sure, be yourself. But when you do or you say something that is out of bounds, you need to own up to that. That's just all there is to it. I've done and said a lot of things in my life that I wish I could take back. And the first thing that I think I would like to do is admit when I'm wrong. I had an interaction with an acquaintance who was part of a community that I was in, and he had what I considered a pretty bad take on Twitter. My response was, hey, what you said really is a bad take, man. You can't go there. It had to do with, it was toxic masculinity at its finest is what it is. And that person responded with sarcasm, which has become kind of the mode of communication that people default to, especially on Twitter and in the gaming community. People can't just have a conversation back and forth saying, I see your point, or that's not what I meant, this is what I meant, and I'm sorry if it came across the wrong way. But that sarcasm that came back to me off my comment was, you missed the joke. And that's another thing that when people get called out for things, they say, oh, it was just a joke. Wow, you totally missed it. It's over your head. No, that can't be your default reaction as an influencer. You can't say, oh, it was just a joke. God, everyone's such a snowflake. They're so soft. Well, no, there's a social responsibility. There's a social contract that you sign as an influencer, whether you know it or not, and whether you want it to be you or not. The Charles Barkley analogy of him saying, I'm not a role model, don't look at me as a role model, I'm just a basketball player. No, Chuck, you are a role model to people, whether you want to be or not. you've taken on that responsibility. If you don't want to be a role model, stop doing interviews. Stop, saying what's on your mind. You don't get to comment on social activities. You don't get to comment on politics unless you want to be responsible for what you said. You can't just say, oh, I'm just a basketball player, don't listen to me. Well, you got in front of the mic and you picked up the phone and you tweeted what your feelings were on any array of things. You're still responsible for it. And I think that's what some major community members need to really stop and think about. There's been some well-deserved criticism towards Bungie, but some of it's gotten way out of hand. There's some influencers out there that really rip apart the people at Bungie and some of the practices that they've had as far as, releasing content and sunsetting and all those other things. And they've maybe not just personally attacked someone individually, but they're not taking into consideration the thousands of employees that put their blood, sweat, and tears into the game, and, oh, your game's trash. Unplayable. It's horrible. And then that mentality of your 150, 300,000 followers take on that same mentality because you brought it to them. There's no balance. There's no, hey, you did this really well, but how about we try this? No, like I said earlier, it's resorted to sarcastic comments and memes, and that's just not the way we see change. One of the reasons why I've had such a hard time doing videos lately is the political climate that we're living in right now. And there's a lot of people that say, you should just stay in your lane, just talk about the things that you know. You developed this channel because it was going to be gaming related. But there is a hard parallel between what's going on politically and what's going on in the gaming community, and we don't have conversations anymore. We don't have constructive conversations anymore, I should say. Everything's sarcastic. Everything is, you're too soft, or wow, what are you mad at today? And sure, there's some things that I've seen where people have been called out and people were nitpicking, small sections of a commentary that an influencer had, and, wanting to see them in financial ruin because of it. And I think that's one of the things that when people talk about cancel culture and they say you've ruined this person's life, their whole livelihood is gone because of one thing they said. And it's partially because that influencer didn't have any contrition. They didn't say that they were wrong. They wanted to die on that hill, and they did. So I just want to get back to a place where we can have a dialogue back and forth without every second or third comment being toxic masculinity, being sarcastic, and really start to listen to each other, because I think that's something that's been just lost in all of this, is that we just don't listen to one another. There's some voices not worth listening to, sure. I will totally agree with that. There's some. But for the vast majority, that quick pick up your phone and tweet something out, and then 5 minutes later, your DMs have blown up, you've got people on your case. Was it worth it? Was it worth your hot take? Was it worth it? And then you've got to ask yourself, are you going to own it? Are you going to own the responsibility that what I said was taken out of context? Was it just truly that bad and you deserve to be, punished socially for it? So anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. We're creeping up on 15 minutes here. I hope that everyone who has subscribed to this channel continues to do so. I will get back to doing what I think that I do well. I probably will be doing a second channel talking about things just like this, because I'd like to separate it from the gaming industry and just talk about social climate. I have a very strong desire to talk about politics, and politics and gaming usually don't blend well. But for the people who don't want to be involved in politics, you're missing out on having your voice heard about things that truly matter in this world. So a like and a sub would be very much appreciated. We will catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.